Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar where the focus of discussion will be on attraction and retention. My name is Gavin Lind and I'm the General Manager, Safety, Workforce and Innovation at the Minerals Council of Australia. And before I introduce today's panelists, I'd like to welcome Tanya Constable, the Chief Executive of the Minerals Council of Australia, to say a few words. Tanya.
Hello everyone, my name is Tanya Constable and I am the CEO of the Minerals Council of Australia. The MCA is the leading advocate for Australia's world-class minerals industry, promoting and enhancing sustainability, profitability and competitiveness. I'm also the interim chair of the Mining Skills Organisation Pilot Steering Group. I'd like to start by thanking you all for joining us here today for the There's More to Mining, Let's Talk Skills and Careers live event. I'd like to express my appreciation to today's panellists, who Gavin will introduce shortly. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. The nature of work in Australia is changing. If we hadn't realised this before 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly ensured that we are paying attention, along with businesses and workplaces across all sectors around the country. With global population growth and rapidly escalating demand for energy and infrastructure, we are using more minerals and metals than ever before. In turn, the demand for workers remains strong. Nearly 40,000 new jobs in the resources sector have been created in Australia since 2016. The mining industry has a great story to tell. Our high-skill, high-wage workforce is younger, better paid, better trained, and has a much higher share of apprentices than other sectors, with average full-time weekly pay of $2,659. More than 65% higher than all industries average. But this means we can't be complacent. A continued focus needs to be on ensuring the industry has access to a pipeline of talent, skilled and ready to make a sustained contribution to the future of Australia's mining industry. Equally important is the need to ensure industry retains those already working in the industry so their individual talents, skills and capabilities can continue to be applied for the collective benefit of individuals, the industry and economy. As an industry, it is recognised that skills development is central to success. Apprentices and trainees comprise 4% of the workforce, double the national average, and more than 35% of these apprentices employed in traditional trades such as metal trades, automotive, electrical and construction. In addition, nearly 1 in 5 in our industry have a university degree or higher and work in a range of roles from engineering to environmental science. The composition of the current and future minerals workforce will continue to evolve with the increasing need for technical skills in data analytics, robotics and artificial intelligence. These changes will require a workforce that will be more diverse, geographically distributed and digitally connected. As the nature of work changes and evolves, workers will need skills and capabilities that are adaptable, transferable and relevant to the needs of the future economy. Increasingly, this is requiring industry to consider new talent pools, people who will have no mining domain knowledge but will be recruited into the mining industry for their skills and capabilities in data analysis, virtual and augmented reality, and mechatronics, to name a few areas. To be successful, the mining industry will need to further elevate itself to become an industry of choice. This is a lofty objective, but absolutely essential to maintain international competitiveness and therefore the ability to continue creating high-wage, high-skilled jobs. As you know, the Australian Government's $585.3 million skills package included funding for 3 skills organisation pilots targeting the priority industries of mining, human services care and digital technologies. The Mining Skills Organisation pilot was announced late last year. Centred on 3 project hubs covering apprenticeships, digital transformation and attraction and retention, the pilot will specifically test key elements of the current vocational education training system with a view to achieving necessary reforms for the benefit of industry, individual and participating organisations. Through the pilot, the mining industry has the flexibility to trial innovative new approaches to skills development and acquisition across the entire training system to complement and enhance the current system and achieve the responsive pathways and skills acquisition required in the immediate and post-COVID-19 employment landscape. The pilot has already identified focus areas of activity in collaboration with industry. Attraction and retention, the focus of today's webinar, is one of those areas. I look forward to hearing the perspectives of panellists today on this important matter, and now I'd like to hand back to Gavin to facilitate today's webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya. And I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I am speaking from today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I extend that acknowledgement to the lands where all our panelists and attendees are across Australia. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome today's panelists. First, we have Scott Brown from Rio Tinto Iron Ore. Scott is Vice President, Human Resources, and has more than 20 years' experience in human resources operations and strategy. Scott has been with Rio Tinto for 16 years and worked in a number of generalist, project-based, and specialist human services roles in Australia and the United States. Welcome, Scott. Next, I'd like to introduce Rachel Wolfe. Rachel is Head of Talent and Capability at Newcrest and also a member of the Mining Skills Organisation Pilot Working Group. Rachel has considerable experience working across a range of industries with more than 6 years in the mining industry. Rachel has worked across all aspects of human resources as a specialist in talent, capability, and remuneration. And she also has considerable experience in mergers and acquisitions and transformations in Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. Welcome, Rachel. I'd also like to introduce Catherine Young. Catherine was the winner of the Exceptional Young Woman in Australian Resources at the 2020 BHP Women in Resources National Awards. Catherine is currently the geotechnical engineer responsible for BHP's Peak Downs mine, having commenced in the organisation as a graduate. Catherine graduated from the University of Queensland in 2012, having completed a civil engineering degree. Welcome to you, Catherine. And finally, I'd like to introduce Val Madsen, Executive General Manager, People at St. Barbara. Val leads the human resources, health, safety, environment, and communities functions across St. Barbara. Val has delivered a people and culture strategy across the St. Barbara functions, which has seen her organisation recognised for its outstanding achievements in diversity and inclusion, employee engagement, and well-being. St. Barbara is the only gold mining company in Australia to have received the Workforce Gender Equality Agency's Employer of Choice for Gender Equality since the award's inception in 2014. Welcome to you, Val. For those participating in the webinar online, there is a Q&A icon which you'll see to the right of your screen, and I encourage you to use this function to ask questions of the panel during today's event. In terms of the format for today, we have 3 distinct sessions which focus on different aspects of attraction and retention. For each session, we will show a short video of around 2 minutes duration, and following each of those, I'll get the thoughts of our panel for today and pose some questions to dig down further on each session theme. So let's get started. Here's the first of those videos.
The resources sector opens so many doors, both locally, nationally and internationally, across so many different career spheres, from being an operator or tradesperson through to health, hygiene and safety, finance, human resources, all different streams of engineering, data analytics and IT, and the list honestly goes on. We are diversifying more and more into different avenues, for example, gaming to assist with automation systems intelligence, and I could keep going. I came from the legal office to the resources sector some 25 years ago, and quite a step change that was. However, the experiences I have had, both working open cut and underground coal, The people I have met, the transformation over the period of time in terms of innovation and technology, culture, and the list goes on, has been unbelievable in such a positive way. If you are passionate about a project that you believe will improve the industry you work in, have supporting managers that do not put glass ceilings over you, encourage you to strive and deliver your project, then anything is possible.
Well, that short video really underscores the focus of today's webinar, which is on talent attraction and retention in the mining industry. Lani has articulated well the breadth of opportunity that is available in the industry and some aspects of her own journey, which commenced over 20 years ago when she made the transition from legal office into mining. Lani also addressed some skills needed in our industry that are transferable. For example, gaming, which assists in automation across the industry. Traditionally, as a sector, we have valued previous mining domain experience. However, in the future, we will need to get better as an industry at recognizing and valuing transferable skills, especially from a technology perspective. I'd like to direct this one to you, Scott, and also Rachel. What do you think the mining industry needs to do differently to ensure that it can attract the necessary skills now and into the future? Well, let's start with you, Scott, and then ask Rachel to follow on.
Thank you very much, Gavin. And I would also like to, and thank you to the MCA for this opportunity. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land at which I'm meeting today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to apologise for my moustache. I am doing Movember, so apologies for that. So Gavin, it is a great question, and for me, I think there's five key items that we can look at doing differently and in fact build upon, because the industry is doing some great work. And this is to attract the skills necessary for now and into the future. So those 5 items I see, 3 external and partnering, and 2 within our businesses. So partnering with the schools, TAFEs and universities is vitally important. Together we can create new pathways and examples of which are the autonomous qualifications and micro-credentialing opportunities that Rio Tinto has been working on. Partnering also provides us with the opportunity to update current pathways, such as the mining engineering degrees, to deliver more relevant and current content. Next, I think we need to think about how we can educate our future employees about the benefits of working in the industry, as Lani pointed to. This allows our employees to better understand how our industry contributes to modern life. I think it's key when both of these that we actually ensure pathways are open to all sectors of society, which may require us to actually work back further into the education system than the vet and university sector. So they're the 3 externals. The 2 internals I think that we can look at is actually deconstructing existing roles. I believe we've got a view of roles that have been formed by history and legislation, and their group of tasks. We can actually reconstruct those into different groups of tasks more suitable to the skills that are available to us. And finally, I'd like to add the challenging the location of work. I believe during COVID, we were able to see work done from different locations. Working in the Pilbara or other mining locations is not for everybody, and to open the applicants for our roles, I do believe that we actually need to really challenge where work can be done from. Rachel, over to you.
Fabulous, Scott. And I'd like to build on your comments. I completely endorse the points that you've raised. I think it's interesting that Lani was able to make the transition into mining. And I think that speaks to one of the challenges, is to actually educate people as to the opportunities that actually are available in the mining industry. And to educate them about the contribution that we need to show more of how we are responsible, we're ethical, and we are sustainable as much as we can be, and to show our prospective employees that we're good for the communities in which promoting us somewhere that they would want to work. Also showing them the types of opportunities, because there are plenty of technical challenges to be solved, plenty of opportunities to learn and grow, and as Lani said, in all sorts of different roles and opportunities. So there is certainly an opportunity for us to promote the diverse nature of work to attract people from other industries and actually show them what's possible. So thanks, Scott, and Gavin, back to you.
Well, wonderful, Scott and Rachel. Thank you for those insights. We have addressed the attraction side of the equation there, but equally important is ensuring that industry has strategies in place to retain the talent it has attracted. Increasingly, people considering coming into the industry are wanting greater visibility of the opportunities that are open to them and what support companies will provide to allow them to realize these opportunities. Val, I'd like to bring you in here and get some comments on some of the considerations for industry to focus on diversity and inclusion. In that video, Lani spoke about this, and I know it's an issue close to your heart. While as an industry we have made gains in this area, can you please share your thoughts around what else we might need to consider?
Thanks, Gavin. I think I want to start with the premise that we all acknowledge and recognise the business case for diversity. We know that greater diversity in companies brings about greater performance. It certainly provides greater innovation with new ideas coming in from different ways of thinking. And we know that it also impacts greater safety. So on that premise, I think there's two things to note around what we could be doing for our diversity. And one from a company perspective is certainly the need to have strong and robust diversity strategies. Barbara, as you mentioned earlier, has seen some good achievements, and in fact, over a long period of time, we've had strategies, and within our strategy, we've had diversity objectives, and we've seen that having objectives as part of your strategy is very, very important because it allows you to identify your targets and move toward those, measure them, monitor them, report them, and you know, I go back to some of the advice we've seen from some of our leaders around we need leadership and we need that accountability. And certainly I think strategy is critical for companies, and I want to challenge companies to put in place some objectives around what do they want their diverse workforce to look like, because once you've got those objectives, you can move toward that. The last comment, I think, which is critical around ensuring diversity in our industry, and this is not just for companies, but this is where, as an industry, we need to partner with our education providers at all levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And we've seen some really great programs, you know, that are communicating the opportunities in this industry to our students, but also educating our teachers so that they can share that with their students, and parents of students. So we need to see more of those. We've had a great program here in WA, Get Into Resources, which targets high school students. But I think more of those are needed to ensure that students are considering, as Tanya mentioned earlier, we want to be the industry of choice. We want to be the industry that everyone sees a career opportunity in. Thanks, Gavin.
And thank you for those insights, Val. Some really key things that we currently do as an industry and can do better. I'll throw this one open to the panel. How do you think we are traveling as an industry with respect to pathways? And what do you see as some of the challenges that we might face, particularly as technology becomes more important as part of our sector?
I'm happy to go first, or at least start off with a few comments. So traditionally, I think we have been very good at we've been very good about saying you come in at one level and you grow. You go from being an engineer to being a senior engineer, etc. I think the challenge for us now is we need to show current employees and prospective employees how you can actually move the industry, and how you can actually transition from one part of a business to building skills and developing a career. There are plenty of people and plenty of examples of people who've done this, who have gone from geology into IT, who've gone from asset management gone from survey into mining, and more we're seeing people go into the new technological aspects of the mining industry. So we certainly need to show that that's possible. But that also means that we need to encourage people to keep learning and building their skill base. You don't come in and stay necessarily in one field or with the information with which you arrived in your job. You're continually learning and growing. And so the connections to educational institutions that Val and Scott both mentioned, I think are really important, because that will be so much of an enabler to actually help people make those moves and be able to build a career.
Thanks, Rachel. I fully agree with the education. I think the challenge that I've been thinking about in terms of pathways is I think we do a relatively good job on many levels internally, I think, and with the operator maintainer cohort within our industries. I think the professional industries I'm not sure what the best word, the technical disciplines, I think we've still got a considerable barrier there of a 4-year degree. It's very structured. It's got very units in it. Ability to earn income whilst doing some of those high contact hour degrees is very hard. And so looking at it and trying to work out how we can actually accelerate and provide transitionary and recognise prior learning for people into those technical disciplines will be key for us. Because otherwise I think we risk continuing to permutate a skills deficit in that area, as well as it being a barrier to entry for many or a large proportion of our society.
Catherine, did you want to add some voice there as a person who's probably been in industry the least amount of time, and what your observations have been?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I've been involved in the industry almost 7 years now. And I have seen an incredible change and shift even in that time. I think that we're definitely making some good improvements, particularly around that flexibility space. And I think, like Rachel said earlier, the COVID has really shown what we can do. So with the technology changes, there are going to be a lot of changes in roles. So I think if we kind of think outside the box around how roles are traditionally being completed, you look at some of the engineering roles, which were, long hours based on site rosters, things like that. And yeah, really think outside the box in terms of flexibility, locations, how those roles can be completed, so we can kind of retain people and as they go through kind of different life stages.
Wonderful. And we've had some really good questions coming through, and I might want to just ask one of these that's come through on our chat, because I think it's a good one to ask. Are we finding, and this one comes from Christian from Tasmania, asks, are you finding that graduates are well prepared for joining your organizations? And if not, what is missing? How could this be improved?
Yeah,
Gavin, I think that's
I'll have a go. You go, Val.
I was just going to say, sorry, Scott, that that's certainly one of the questions that we've discussed in the Workforce and Innovation Committee. How to make sure that our grads are coming in work ready, and that's been something that we've focused on with some of our project work within that committee. So I think there is some work being done in that space. I think what it does accentuate for us is the need for stronger collaboration between industry and our educational institutions. And, that goes back to career pathways as well. We've seen some progress with vocational institutions and higher ed, but that needs to be continued. I think going back to Scott's comment, we're good, but we're not yet great. So I think there's been some inroads, but more to be done, and I think that can happen through greater collaboration and consultation.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I think if you think about when you start a 4-year degree and what changes in that 4 years, I think educators do a great job of what they try and teach their employees and also their students and educate them. I think it's how do we actually do more blended learning such that it's not you fall off the end of a 4-year degree and then start a job. How does those two things phase together such that the experience increases as the need for the formal education decreases over the 4 years?
Well, thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts with us. And now let's go, keep encouraging the questions coming. We'll try and get to as many of them as we can from the audience. But I'd like to move on now to the second part of the webinar for us today, focusing on technology and its application in the industry. So here's a little video to get our conversation going.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Marsh. I work for down at MEI, which is Mining, Energy and Industrial. I'm based in Sydney and I'm a graduate mechanical engineer. School, I was interested in maths and science and I was really good at that. And then so engineering was the natural progression. And at uni I did flexible first year, ended up in mechanical and then got offered a job as an intern at Downer. And I've stayed here, then I've moved through the different sectors and then I'm working in mining. As a graduate mechanical engineer, what I do daily tends to vary quite a lot. Some days I could be doing project work and some days I could be working in the digital engineering sector. Today I'll be assisting Jacob doing a UAV fixed-wing drone operation. I came in not really knowing what I would be doing, so I suppose it's not what I expected, but that's a good thing. What I love most would be how varied it is. I could be visiting a site, or I could be in the office where I'm usually based. I could be doing project work on a computer, I could be doing meetings with a client, or I could be working on our digital technology and expanding into virtual reality. So I've been working on taking drone scans of our mines. So we have a fixed wing drone which will take photos of our mine site and then we'll put it onto a computer and create a 3D model. And then from that point, I can take that 3D model and put it into a game engine where we can go through the model in virtual reality. An important skill for my job is the ability to be flexible and pick up on different things quickly and be able to adapt to change. Technology has changed the way I work quite a lot because how we would used to do projects, we'd have schematics and drawings of our site and most of the time they'd be out of date because they could be decades old. We'd try to fit new equipment in and it just wouldn't fit. But now we can take a scan of the site and we'd have a digital twin where we can work directly in the model and put in our design and then we know that straight away that our design is going to work. If I was to talk to someone who is thinking about working in mining, I'd say it's not all just digging in dirt. I'm based in an office and so I could be working on a mine from a different state and still be part of the mining industry. My career so far in Downer has already changed paths a few times and I'm looking into the digital engineering space, but later on, who knows where I could end up.
Technology is an important part of our everyday life. From smartphones to electric cars, we are becoming more and more dependent on technology and technological innovation. The mining industry is no different. Technology, whether autonomous technology, drones, or digital twinning, just to name a few, is making our industry more productive and safer. It also means skill requirements are changing and companies are also required to increasingly look outside our industry and traditional recruiting pools to meet current and future needs. Scott, a few years ago, Rio Tinto partnered with the Western Australian Government and South Metropolitan TAFE to develop a number of automation-related qualifications. Can you outline why you did this and what the objective was?
Thanks, Gavin. Yes, we're very proud of these qualifications. And really they are a partnership between the universities, also between TAFE and Rio Tinto. We invested around $2 million in the program to develop the qualifications for really a threefold drive. So really it was providing workers in the resource sector and others looking to join it with the skills and knowledge needed to be successful in an increasing STEM-based world. Formally recognise these skills and knowledge. In many operator and controller roles, previous experiences was a determiner of suitability and the people didn't move between jobs without a formal qualification that could be recognised. The third part is actually provide the industry with a formal pathway to entry beyond experience, ensuring that we don't create our own labour shortage through our existing headcount and training capabilities limiting the pace of development. So the qualifications that we developed, there was 3 of them. There was a Certificate 2 in Autonomous Workplace Operations, which was mainly focused at our operator workforce. and people wishing to move into that pathway, working effectively in an automated workplace micro-credential for our trade qualified and apprentice technicians, and a Cert 4 in remote operation centres for our controllers based at the operations centre in Perth. I really do think Australia is actually in the midst of an important shift, and we're seeing new business across all industries. And so mining has moved to really become a genuine leader in this technology, and it's recognised that not only do we need to provide the skills for our industry, but industries outside. And it does go to a few of the questions I've seen about how is industry working and investing, both for its own needs, but also the needs of the broader society. The other part of these programs that we've actually put in place is a Vet in Schools program. So we're able to take our Cert 2 and year 11 and 12, I think it's 11 and 12 students are able to complete that, and that is a pathway into our industry and also into Rio Tinto, with several places being offered directly from the school traineeships into our business.
Thank you for that, Scott. Very interesting, and it's such a well-received initiative. Val, we know that companies have their technology roadmaps that outline how technologies are going to be implemented, and the interaction between technology and people is, of course, crucial to that. From an internal perspective, can you outline the importance of how this change is managed?
Yeah, good question, Gavin. I think one of the critical aspects as companies are looking, tracking and putting in plans around emerging technologies, it's really important to take your workforce on the journey. Generally, what you can see happen once you talk about we're going to bring in some new technology, your workforce can be a little concerned about that. What does that mean for me? I've done this job for so many years. So I think the keys there are to, have great communication and consultation, and make sure that that's socialised with the workforce and that they're taken on the journey. I also don't think that we can underplay the importance of education and training and ensuring that our workers are confident with that technology. So we're really providing that support. And I guess my other point that I'd like to make is that we're all on a journey with technology, and we're all at varying levels of maturity in terms of the adoption of technology. And for many small and medium companies, they're still sort of on that journey. What I will say is, certainly for us at St Barbara, when we began looking at what does the workforce of the future look like, and obviously technology is a big part of that, what we did identify is let's not wait for the technology. So if you're on that journey, you can start educating your workers now around some core skills that they'll need regardless of what the technology is. And they are, those essential skills: problem solving, good communication, collaboration. So I think, the key there is taking the workforce on the journey with you.
Yeah, very, very important points, Val. Thanks. Catherine, from your perspective, can you give us an idea of how you use technology in your day-to-day role as a geotechnical engineer, and what you see as some of the near-term changes that may take place in your profession that will be technology-driven?
Yeah, absolutely. Technology plays a very important part in my day-to-day role, and the amount that we rely on technology continues to increase. I'm doing my role really differently now than what I did even when I started in the industry 7 years ago, and I'll build on some of the examples that Rebecca had. The example that I usually use is that when I first started, we had our monthly aerial LiDAR scans being done. But now with the new tech, and that was kind of standard. But now with the new technology in UAVs and drones, we kind of complain if our data is more than a few days out of date. So from a safety perspective, we've been able to move more into the GIS space to communicate hazards and their controls more effectively. And we're looking at more and more ways we can better integrate with the GIS as technology and our access to live data continues to improve. The software that we use is improving. We used to do a lot of 2D modelling, but over the last few years, 3D modelling has really become much more quicker and much more accessible. Models that we usually take like weeks to build, we can run in a day. We also, and I think that you might have seen a picture of them in Rebecca's video, we've got access to special high wall mapping drones, which means that working with the geology team, we can map structure of large areas relatively quickly and incorporate that into our models rather than having to map each area by hand with a compass, which is really what we were doing not too long ago. So yeah, they're just some examples, but it is really exciting, the rate at which things are changing, and it means we can model more, work with better data, and overall make our environment safer and more efficient.
That's fantastic, Catherine. Thank you for those perspectives. It's amazing how quickly a discipline can evolve, and those new skills that you talk about, you've seen yourself accessing those to make your job more safe, firstly, and more productive. Thank you. Rachel, as Head of Talent and Capability at Newcrest, can you give us some observations on how you see continued technological change impacting on recruitment into the industry? And importantly, what does this mean for people already in the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. So first of all, in terms of recruitment into our industry, I actually think technology makes it easier. So first of all, as Catherine said, it's making our minds, it's making our industry safer. So work that previously put people at risk can now be done remotely. So that in itself actually makes us a more attractive employer or a more attractive industry. I think as Scott referenced earlier, it gives us more flexibility. We don't have to do the work. It means that there's more remote work available and we don't actually have to put people on mines to be able to look after the mines. So that certainly opens up the talent pool of people who are available to work. And once again, it makes it more attractive. And then secondly, it's exciting development. We are, a lot of the work that we're doing around technology is cutting edge. Therefore, it actually makes us appealing. People want to come and be involved in that sort of technological advance. I think technology in terms of recruitment is an absolute upside for us. In terms of what does it mean in terms of different skills, Val talked before about, some of the softer skills that we need to train people in just to make them ready to adapt that technology. And I would build on Val's comments and say, the things you already talked about, problem solving, but the ability to adapt to change, take on those new ways of working. And I think there's a real skill set around integrating technology with people, because technology is not the be all and end all. And you've got people who've got very different approaches, people who come at things from a very technical perspective, people who come at things from a very human perspective, and trying to find that interface where both make sense to each other, I think is absolutely critical. So we certainly do need to build skills. I loved, the comment that Scott made earlier about deconstructing our jobs and being able to identify the requisite skills in other industries and how do we actually pull them in and leverage those. We do need different skills, and what we're talking about today is fundamental to that approach. So thanks, Gavin.
Oh, wonderful, Rachel, and thank you to all the panelists for those observations. We've had some really, interesting questions come on board, and I do want to ask the panel this one from Giovanna, who asked earlier, what is the strategy to attract 17 and 18-year-olds, or rather gaming lovers, 17 and 18-year-old gaming lovers to the mining industry? What specific skills developed by gaming and virtual reality would be more valued?
Gavin, I'm happy to have a go at that one. I think the skills that I think we get through gaming and it's a couple-fold for me, but really it's being able to visualise and work with materials that aren't directly in front of you. You don't have that physical presence of, and like Catherine said, in the modelling they're doing these days, you see people being able to convert from the physical where presence and proximity is the driver versus being able to visualise, and that change, depending on the exposure that you've had to virtual reality and or gamification, does shift, and we need to be able to have, I think, and there's a question I saw on there about working remotely. Our operations are now controlled from Perth at 1,600 kilometres from the mining operations, and the controllers are operating the autonomous haul trucks and trains, and so being able to visualise what is happening at that site without cameras and is a really key skill. They also operate things like the rock breakers from that site, and so there's a dexterity that comes with being able to operate a remote piece of equipment, not just through the computer and programming, but actually through the joystick on the site. So they're just two of the skills that I see.
Yeah, fascinating indeed. And there was an observation by Steve on the chat that said, imagine doing all of this using 3G, and how important communications development to mining is and how difficult that'll be into the future. So, we'll take that on notice, Steve. There's another question I'd like to ask of the panel, and this one was from Les, which said, often innovation in VET is held back due to restrictive training packages. How can the sector support RTOs in creating flexible learning and pathways? Not sure who'd like to jump in on that one.
Yeah, Gavin, I'm happy to talk to that one. I think it goes back to the earlier discussion around the importance of that collaboration between industry and the education institutions, and that can even come down to partnerships between companies and the RTOs. I know that we've certainly been able to do that at our WA operations, partnering with a local registered training organisation and setting up so that our workers, as they're doing their job, we've got our own internal people qualified, and they're not just learning on the job, they're being assessed in terms of their competency. And through that partnership, we've been able to ensure that we've got a really skilled, highly trained, and also then you have the employee value proposition that people feel valued, they've got qualifications. So I think, again, it does come back to the importance of partnerships and greater collaboration. And I think there are ways that we can ensure that we've got good blended learning and training and assessment in our workplaces. So that's just one example of how we've done that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, panel, for those observations on a very hot topic about the role of technology and technology adoption, which our industry certainly leads on in many instances. I'd like to move on to the final video of our time together today, which deals with a basket of topics, including careers information. So we'll regroup after watching this video.
It's such an honour to be recognised for doing what you love to do and for what you're passionate about. I've had such a rewarding career, and mining has allowed me to work across a number of sites in central Queensland. When I was at school and university, I didn't really understand the full range of careers that mining encompassed, and I certainly didn't start my engineering degree with the intention of becoming a geotechnical engineer specialising in open cut mining. It's something that I kind of found along the way through university subjects and work experience, and I'm so glad that I did. It's allowed me to find a career that I'm passionate about, where I get to work in a highly technical engineering role, but still get to take a hands-on approach to working on site. So hopefully through this award and with other organisations I'm involved with, I can encourage a new generation of STEM enthusiasts to think about careers in the resources industry so that they can also find careers that are exciting, rewarding, and that they're passionate about. It really is such an exciting time to get involved in the resources sector. Technology advances are having a big impact on how we do our day-to-day work. I'm definitely not doing my role the same way I was doing it 5 years ago, and I can't wait to see how we'll be doing things in 5 years' time. It's such a dynamic industry, and it's a really exciting time to be a part of it.
Well, what a great video that was. And thanks to you, Catherine, for being the talent for that one, which was recorded as part of your Women in Resources National Awards journey. Our congratulations on your win on that award too. So Catherine, I'd like to fire that first question at you. You covered so many aspects of topics that we have addressed today, and I know as a geotechnical engineer, you're actively engaged in a range of professional development opportunities and activities through the Bowen Basin and Hunter Valley Open Cut Geotechnical Society, or the BOHOGS for short. Quite a mouthful there. Pathways and career information were 2 points you raised, and both of them are very important now in terms of attracting and retaining talent in our industry. What do you think we need to do differently in terms of career information and engagement?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that those of us who work in the resources industry should make sure we're making a point of telling people how great our jobs are and the variety of different areas that we can work in. So I throw that out as a challenge to everyone who's attending this session today. I think when people think of mining, they're thinking big equipment, machinery, explosives, holes in the ground, and they don't really see areas of engineering that are highly technical, surveyors and GIS who get to work with all the best technology in the business. And the big role that, say, like health, safety and environment specialists play, the logistics teams, the marketing teams. So there's the resources industry just covers such a broad range of careers. So in terms of career information, that's where I kind of think we need to be focusing is the breadth of career opportunities that people can take up and really showcase some mining professionals' careers to give young people or those considering a change in career of examples of where they can go and all the different things that they can do. So with engagement, I came up through the STEM pathways at school, and after I started engineering, I hadn't really given mining too much thought. I was kind of stuck in that civil engineering direct path mindset. So I think it's really important for us as an industry to be involved in STEM, and particularly those formative years of university to really get students starting to think about mining as a potential career path.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Catherine, those insights. Val, in recent times, we have seen the labour market for a number of skilled occupations tighten quite considerably. This places an importance on companies being able not only to attract new talent, but retain those skilled already in the industry. So can you please give us some insights into the retention as an issue from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. And certainly even with COVID, we've seen challenges with mobility across state lines and the impact that's had on the industry. I think two critical points I'd like to make here. Firstly, within mining, we know that our industry and our work is cyclic in nature. And over time, we've seen where, commodity prices might drop and then there's changes in organisational structures and for workforces. What I think the industry needs to be better at is redeploying and ensuring that we're not losing our personnel. I can think back a few years ago when, prices were dropping and so many geologists got out of the industry. And then, of course, when things changed, we went looking for them and they said, yeah, we want to work in that industry because it's always up and down. So I think we've got to get better at being more adaptable. And this comes back to that transferability of skills. We've got to be better, more proactive on how we redeploy rather than restructure. And the second point I think I'd like to make around, retaining our talent is around ensuring that we've got inclusive workplaces. So what does that mean? Well, that means everyone feels safe and they feel valued and respected. And to get an inclusive workforce, you need inclusive leadership. And for those, I'm sure many of you have read the report coming out of Respect at Work. If you haven't read it, it's very confronting when you look at the mining industry in particular. And that, again, if we're going to want to be attracting a diverse talent to our industry, we need to ensure that we're going to retain them and that they're going to feel respected, valued and safe. And that's where those inclusivity is going to be really critical to retaining our talent. And we clearly need to do more in that space.
Wonderful, Val, and thank you for raising those issues about, feeling respected and feeling safe and, a valued contributor to this amazing industry. Scott, Catherine also mentioned pathways, which are becoming an increasingly important issue for people considering joining our industry. With technology playing an ever-increasing role, this is also forcing some changes in what pathways in our industry look like. Can you give us some perspective on how you see pathways now and into the future in our industry?
Thanks, Gavin. I think probably before I get going, I just want to say I fully agree with Val about the respect at work, and reading that report, and also the criticality of having a workplace where everybody does have psychological safety. The other part I'd probably, I think, and it links into this discussion, is we haven't really talked about the concept of the T-shaped person, and that discussion has sort of come and gone over time. But really, what it talks about is how do you actually build the behaviours and the ability for lifelong learning as well as the technical skills. So you've got to cover both axes. I think, and this is about pathways within our industry, and it goes back to Val's point again about redeployment. I think lifelong learning is the key. The time of getting a degree and then that's your learning done, or a vet qualification, or whatever those things are. I think it's going to be constant updating and adaptation of people across different roles and different disciplines potentially as well. And so with that, how we actually can support the pathways within our industry using micro-credentialing and opportunities through universities and TAFE, as well as actually through Rio Tinto is participating in a program, or actually leading a program for which we've invested $10 million with Blue Chili and Amazon Web Services to actually create what's called the Future Minds Accelerator. So it really is about trying to build STEM skills back within the school system, but actually enable the children of the future be able to actually, and the employees of the future, be able to actually work across various roles and have more of that, the T-shaped person and the behaviours and the lifelong learning, and maybe some of the deep technical, well, really focusing on just the deep technical expertise.
Very interesting, and it is one of those lifelong things that they keep stepping back into, activating interest in the right subject material, so that a future in the industry, whether it's engineering or whether it's technology related or business or law, is in fact possible, because all these jobs exist. Now, Rachel, you're a member of the Mining Skills Organisation Pilot Working Group, and I in fact chair that working group. And you've been involved in industry consultations and discussions around attraction and retention. Clearly, as an industry, if we are to attract and retain the best talent, we need to become an industry of choice. What does that term, industry of choice, mean to you?
Thanks, Gavin. So I think the reality is that more and more these days, people are looking for a career. They're not just looking for a job, and they're also looking to make a positive difference. There's a real onus on us to show how actually being part of the mining and the minerals industry is actually being part of something that does make a difference. It has a very positive impact to the economy, but also to communities, to families, and to them personally, and showing them actually what's possible. So I think that's critically important. Then I'd also like to build on comments made by Val and Scott, which is around, if we're going to be an industry of choice, actually showing people that we are an inclusive industry, that our workplaces are inclusive, that people can come to work and feel free to be themselves and be the best version of themselves, I think is critically important, as well as flexibility. So, with technology, it's becoming increasingly able to have flexibility in terms of where people work. But even when you need to be on a particular remote site, having flexibility in terms of how rosters, etc., and giving people the ability to manage family and other responsibilities, I think is something that we need to look at seriously. And I know that a number of companies have made some significant traction. Finally, I'd say in terms of it's not a job, it's a career. It's showing people the pathways. One of the questions earlier about how do you engage with 17 and 18-year-olds, our experience at Newcrest is that you engage with them a lot through storytelling. So whether it's storytelling through social media or whether it's storytelling face-to-face at schools, it's giving people that lived experience. Catherine, it's your video that you showed in terms of talking about the lived experience of what it's like to work in our mines. That's how we actually engage with people and actually show them what's possible. So I think that's what we need to do more of. And then the last comment I'd make, I think, was building on Rebecca's comment, which is it's not just about digging in dirt or rocks and trucks. There is so much opportunity, and there is an opportunity for us to actually promote and showcase those and get people really excited about our industry.
Well, thank you for that, Rachel. Some really wonderful points. And Catherine, I'd like to bring you in and ask you, as someone who's been in the industry for a relatively short period of time, can you give us the benefit of your observation so far around the importance of diversity in the mining industry and what benefits it brings?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of think like Val said earlier, we know the business case for safety and for production, but I think diverse environments are just better places to work. If you have a diverse environment, you tend to attract a diverse talent pool because people want to work there. And I think when diversity becomes the norm, and I have worked in teams within the industry where that is the case, everyone can just come to work and be at their best without standing out or being singled out or feeling pressured to conform to a certain traditional stereotype that's kind of been in our industry. Diversity in management in mining is also particularly important. You hear it a lot, but you can't be what you can't see. Well, it's definitely a lot harder to anyway. So having great role models is really important to encourage those who are starting out, and to give people examples of the pathways that they can pursue their career in.
That's fantastic. I'd like to, all these observations have been absolutely amazing, but I'd like to go back to just one of the earlier questions that we had from our audience. And it was around, how do we think about being more adaptable? Sorry, that was not the right question. This one I wanted to ask here was, how do we manage the impact of attracting local Indigenous persons into operations, and what upskilling pathways are available, and do we see higher retention rates when those connections are there in that way? So thank you very much for that, Tracy from Gulkula Mining.
Yeah, Gavin, look, I saw that question. It is a great question. I think there's two things there. I think, again, this is our diversity strategy, and it's not just gender. It is around Indigenous and an Aboriginal workforce, and also local. So you've got many mining and resources companies that are fly in, fly out. There should be strategies around employing local, and there should be strategies around employing Aboriginal to get that diverse workplace. And there's many different programs that are in place. Should there be more? Absolutely. If I look at WA, on average, it's I think 5% of our workforce being Aboriginal. That's very low. We have a target. We've got objectives and we've got actions that we're endeavouring to increase those numbers. So certainly apprenticeship programs have worked very well and been successful, and that's some of the ways that we've found.
Gavin, I think for me, and to build on Val's point and Tracy's question, I think the Indigenous employment is probably got threefold for me. The first is, how do we use our combined efforts as an industry to help close the gap? If you read that report, that is some very confronting reading about time and the changes of Indigenous people on many fronts, and we need to really work out how we do better at combining our efforts there. Then there's the traditional pathways which Indigenous people join our business, which is really operators, maintainers, trades, and that's there. And then the third one for me is, how do we create opportunities for more Indigenous people into our leadership roles? And I think Catherine's statement's great. I've not heard that before. What you can't be, what you can't see, and I think that's very true. And we need to really work on that. And following the Yukon Caves destruction, for which Rio Tinto deeply apologises, that we're really having a deep hard look at where we've actually not met those expectations and how we really firm up across those three pathways into our industry.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, for those observations. And to everyone who participated in today's event, we thank you very much. We weren't able to get to all the questions, but I am told that we are making a note of all the questions and will endeavour to either write back personally or get a frequently asked questions page going on our website on minerals.org.au, where you can find a lot more information about our More to Mining Careers Guide. You can also find more information about the Mining Skills Organisation pilot there, which we mentioned earlier at the start. But I'd like to thank all of us, who participated today, and thank you very much to today's panelists for their thoughts and contributions: Scott Brown, Rachel Wolfe, Catherine Young, and Val Matson. And thank you all for joining us in this debate, well, not debate, but panel session. I've enjoyed the discussion very much, a lot of very interesting insights, and very much looking forward to doing something like this again in the very near future. But again, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.